So our first segment here, we're going to be talking about Stephen Ross. We're going to be talking about Stephen Ross retaining both Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier. I'm going to bring up the statement that Stephen Ross made. Uh, so as we now look towards 2025, our football operation will continue to be led by Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel with my full support. Their positive working relationship is an asset to the Dolphins, and I believe in the value of stability. However, continuity and leadership is not to be confused with an acceptance that the status quo is good enough. We will take a hard look at where we have fallen short and make the necessary changes to deliver our ultimate goal of building and sustaining a winning team that competes for championships. Stephen Ross. So I'm going to just go around the horn here. What are your initial thoughts on this? Anthony, I'll start with you.
Yeah, this feels a lot like Chris Grier telling us that we're more worried about the offensive line than he is, right? Like, it absolutely. First of all, the timing of it was absolutely horrid. Like, 2 hours after the game ends, you lose to a division rival who only had 4 wins prior. You're coming out with this nonsense. Is like, did you think this was like a helping hand on a Dolphins fan's shoulder or something? If anything, you just added fuel to the fire. Absolutely tone deaf statement. I wish you would have taken more time to think about it. I agree. There's something to be said for sustainability, and there's something to be said for having confidence in your guys. But man, at least make it look like it was a hard decision. Like this thing coming out when it did, and the way that it's written, like we're fools. We don't know what we're talking about. We're just emotional fans, right?
You should have said it last week because obviously you were going to keep both of them anyways.
Yeah. The whole thing rubbed me the wrong way. I was annoyed beyond belief. I mean, to this, I still am, but like eventually you just get over stuff, right? It happens, you move on. But like, this was like we had just gotten done talking about how we like Stephen Ross as an owner, and then that makes it really hard to defend that point of view when like he just does this. It's just so poorly done. Yeah, all the way around, F minus.
I wasn't a fan of the timing. I'll say that. And like you said, Taylor, it was your mind was obviously made up prior to this debacle against the New York Jets. Anthony, what were your thoughts? Josh, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, honestly, I've been very vocal about my support of liking Ross as an owner. He is the type of owner that you want, despite what some of us emotional fans on social media say, right? I think, what you want in an owner, and I'm going on a little tangent here, but I'll get back to your question, I promise. But what you want in an owner is somebody that's willing to spend the money wherever it is needed to be spent and not ask questions, and then take it a step further, not mingle, right? I mean, he has every right as an owner who shells out millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on a weekly and hourly and minute by minute basis to the staff, to these players, to meddle, right? To see what his money is getting him, if you will. But he's a fan. He trusts his hires, and for good or bad, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent. He trusts his hires, and you know what? As an owner, great. Do you have to agree with his hires? I don't. Or his decisions? I don't. And just like you, just like Anthony, and just like Taylor, I mean, I thought the timing was suspect. It was questionable. It was, you could tell it was a reaction as opposed to a thought out release. It was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, the houses and they're burning, they brought the pitchforks, they're burning the bridges. We got to release something and let everyone know it's fine. When in reality, it was just like, oh, here's a bunch of gasoline. Let's figure it out, stupid. You know what I mean? And so, I am a staunch believer in continuity, not just for continuity's sake, but to help build a culture, to help build a kind of relatability to a team, so players know what they're coming into, and there's not a lot of turnover, and you have players that can kind of develop from year to year in the same system and get better and work on things, as opposed to always having to learn a new playbook and new terminology. But yeah, the release of the statement, the timing of that release was not done well.
No, it certainly wasn't. But I agree with what you're saying about Stephen Ross. You want an owner who's not a Jerry Jones, who's doesn't have his finger in every single pie. Stephen Ross, he spends the money, he writes the checks, and then he, like you said, he trusts his people to do their jobs to the best of their abilities. And look, that since Stephen Ross has taken over ownership of the Miami Dolphins, that model has not led to playoff wins, obviously, because 25 years. But you can't argue with the way he does things.
Yeah,
He does.
I will say, and you and I have talked about this, Keith. His commitment to mediocrity is what frustrates me.
Yeah,
It's like, I
Yeah.
understand you want to be behind your guy, and you said it. I'm paraphrasing you, but I understand that you want to be behind your guys, but cut bait when it's time to cut bait. Like, learn to
Yeah.
read the tea leaves, and when something is not working, don't be afraid to jump ship, because it's not always one step forward, two steps back in
Mhm.
those kind of decisions. It can be the grass. I think you said, the way you said it, is the grass isn't always greener
Yeah.
in most cases, but there are cases where the grass is already dead on this side. So, I mean,
What's the difference?
what's the difference?
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say, like, much to Keith, you've brought up several times Grier's statement earlier this year, and he actually had to eat crow on that statement in his
Yes.
press conference. But I just imagine all offseason, I'm going to be coming back to this sentence: if their positive working relationship is an asset, like any dumb move they make, I'm going to be like, it's okay, guys, because their positive working relationship is an asset. Okay?
Yeah.
That's all
And-
that matters.
And to your point, Anthony, Chris Grier eating crow regarding his statement regarding the offensive line, he basically came out and said, I had to put on an air of confidence for the guys that we had in the building.
Okay.
I respect it, but also don't treat me like an idiot while you're doing that. You guys are more worried about the offensive line. We were worried because we have eyes, and as it turns out, we were justified in being worried.
We were worried because we have eyes. Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah.
No shit, Chris Grier. Like, come on, man. If
Well, it's
we
also
see it,
because he was like, hey, we got a quarterback who gets the ball out fast. We had a good run the year before, number one offense, which all that's understandable. But it's exactly what you were saying, Keith. It was the way he said it.
Yeah.
That was like, oh,
Don't
okay,
talk down to me.
I'm the idiot for not seeing the talent on this offensive line. Okay, let's come back in a year. And
Yeah. Don't talk down to me. Don't patronize me.
Yeah.
So Taylor, give me your thoughts on Chris Grier's on Stephen Ross's statement.
I thought that kind of what I alluded to earlier, what everybody said. I thought the timing was really bad. You might as well, to me, have said it last week. I think it probably would have came across probably not good at all, but better than what it did. Because
Yeah.
at least we would have went to that Jets game going like, okay, here's the expectations. Let's move on with that. And what this statement really is like, hey, we're just going to run it back again. Granted, I think that press conference, while I didn't agree with everything, they sat in the pocket for like 40 minutes and kind of ate crow. Went like, hey, we're going to have to invest in the offensive line. Going to have to do certain things. The finding players didn't work. All that stuff sounds good. But honestly, I'm at the point with this regime. This is how bad this year was. I'm at the point with this regime where it's like, okay, but if this isn't fixed by midseason, both of them, I think, should be gone.
yeah, and I think that, Taylor, to your point, I think that's what frustrates me about all of this is that, and we said it on the show, Anthony, you were the first one to kind of bring it up in this fashion, but it's, if you know that your coaches and GMs are on hot seats, and I don't mean to be repetitive from past shows, and you go into the next season knowing that one screw up, which based on historical track records is probably going to happen, that you're going to let them go, then why not do it in the offseason? Because now you're not wasting an entire season or half a season, if you will, by letting go your head coach and your GM and then all of the other coaches that come along with that. Then you're not losing the rest of the season whenever that happens, as opposed to
Josh,
just.
Let me add on to that point
Yeah.
because what you could have done as well is you could have got a new GM in there because at this point, Chris Grier, which we'll get into Chris Grier's entire tenure, at least as the actual GM of the team and not whatever role he actually had before that. But you could have got a new GM in there with a new vision for what the team should be. And then that person can assess Mike McDaniel. There's a chance, not a very good one because that's rare it ends up working, but there's a chance a new GM could come in and be like, no, McDaniel wasn't the problem here. You just needed to have somebody to tell him no. Like what he does can work as long as he doesn't have as much power within the organization. Because not all coaches should have that organizational power. And it's not like Mike McDaniel had like a power struggle, but as we talked about, I think on the show last week, Chris Greer is the kind of GM where it's like, what do you need? Okay, I got you.
He's a yes man. Yeah.
Mhm.
He
Which
lets
I-
his coach. How did you say it, Keith? Or maybe it was Anthony. He lets his coaches buy the groceries. Is that what it was? Is that how you said it?
Sounds
Good way
more
to
like
put it,
Keith.
either
Yeah, and the grocery thing, the grocery analogy is apt here because he lets his coaches buy the groceries, and he went right to the candy aisle.
Hey, whoa, easy.
Went right. Hey,
It's the best aisle in the grocery store.
no, you gotta get some veggies in your diet, man. You gotta get some meat and potatoes up in there, and he went right for the candy.